Today on the Three Gorillas podcast, Joe, Mark, and Greg discuss the ex-San Antonio officer's acquittal in an on-duty shooting. We're talking dismissed without cause. You have found the Three Gorillas podcast. Listener discretion is advised. Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Mark. How are you guys doing?
Morning, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. It's been a little bit since we've done one. I know, Mark, you've been super busy. Joe, I know you've been super busy. And I can say I had no intent to go back to work full time, but I am working full time. And I also has been super busy. Joe, what have you been working on, man? Like it's been like 4 weeks, right?
Yeah, we're working on. We have pieced together a case that is definitely going to go ahead and keep us busy for at least the next I see about 2 months, because we're doing historical stuff, and when you're having to drop grand jury subpoenas everywhere, and we have upwards of about 30 of them out.
Oh wow!
We have 3 search warrants out to different emails, and then some other ones to some state agencies. By the time we get all that back, we have to sort through all that, so then we can go ahead and piece it together and then go after some people, which is going to be very, very interesting and something I really would like to do a podcast on.
We'll definitely do it, and I know we probably can't talk about it now since it's an ongoing investigation.
But do it right now.
I tell you what, man, Lynn and I just went and bought a new car. We went and Lynn was looking for a new car, and we've been looking at all this stuff. We went and looked at Mazda. We looked at Ford. We looked at Chevy. We went and looked at Jeep. And we're kind of a little bit of a Volkswagen family, right? We had, I had Volkswagens when I was a kid, and it's really nostalgic for me. And I kind of really like the brand. The brand is kind of cool. And so she ended up looking at a $53,000 Volkswagen Atlas, and she beat these dudes down to $39,000 and rolled out of the yeah. Right now,
is it a van? Is it a van? Is it a van?
No,
they just put that out. It's a brand. It looks like the old van.
It's electric, dude. You can't get it in anything. In the distance on it is like 216 miles per charge. They're idiots. They really screwed that up.
Did they throw in a pair of skinny jeans for you?
I'm wearing skinny jeans right now. I am wearing skinny jeans.
A scarf and an electric cigarette.
Oh, it's a beautiful. It's the brand, dude. It's the brand.
Yeah. Do they have a side of what with that? No, go ahead.
We rolled out of there in this Volkswagen Atlas, and it is super nice. It is the technology package on it. Everything's beautiful. But my point is we did a podcast on the Texas Tag-demic, the problem with the millions and millions of dollars that cartels and everybody else has stolen from the Department of Transportation and our registration for vehicles. And Joe Escribano right here on the Three Gorillas podcast was an instrumental person stirring all that up and trying to get that to stop. Now, the reason I bring this up is because we're on the user end of this. We bought a vehicle, right?
And they should have put a plate on there, a hard one.
Yeah. And they didn't have any. And so they gave us a dealer plate. We had a dealer plate for 4 days.
Oh, that's good. They can do that.
And yeah, they put us out on an extended drive or whatever, and they wouldn't close on the car. They would not sell the car to us. And I kept trying to buy it, and I kept trying to pay them, and they're like, oh, our computers are down. Next one, our financing manager had to leave to do something. Next thing, he had an emergency. They kept putting it off, and I was like, dude, we need to take care of that. So finally, Lynn went down, and they got a plate for her. They finally found a plate, and they put them on there. But my point is, I noticed in the last couple of weeks, you drive around in Texas now, and you don't see paper plates anymore.
Correct.
You got rid of the paper plates for the most part, Joe. We're driving around. I don't see any paper plates, but now they're issuing these metal plates,
Correct.
and we have to put the metal plate on,
Mm-hmm.
and then we wait 6 to 8 weeks, and then we get our real plate that's going to be shipped to us, right?
No,
How does that work?
that plate that they gave you is what you're gonna wind up with. That's
Okay. So they
all they
changed
do in the computer. For example, you get behind a car and you
Mhm.
just bought it. You have that plate on there. When I run a 28 on it or the check on it, it's going to give me back that you're buying it. It's going to show me that. It's
Okay.
going to be buyers. And
Okay.
then once the registration comes through, then it's going to have the normal registration on it. It's all done by computer. Now, they don't have to
Gotcha.
send you anything. You don't have to get traumatized by going down to, the tax office or whatever. Have to be in line there and wait till, the coming of the Lord to get your
Right.
stuff. So.
I'm really hoping that this is going to take care of that huge amount of fraud that was going on, millions and millions and millions of dollars. So, I wanted to share that with you because as an end user on this whole thing, because I know you've been working on this thing for 4 years, 4 years.
At least, yes.
And the millions of dollars that were stolen. And it's so funny on how so many people don't equate to millions or billions of dollars, like billions of dollars being stolen by people in Dearborn, Michigan. And half the country just shrugs their shoulders like, yeah, well, it's no big deal. We'll just move on and do whatever. It's like, no,
The
that's
Pentagon does
billions.
that every day. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's billions of tax dollars. This isn't some sort. I mean, I think for most people, when you think about $1 billion, it's incomprehensible of how much that really is. It's a million. And at this point, when we hear we're, $40 trillion in debt, people just shrug their shoulders and go, yeah, well, it's debt, and one of these days it's going to explode and it's all going to be worth nothing. We're going to have to make new currency and figure it out. And it's like, no, what in the world is going on? So anyway, Mark, I understand that did you guys finally clear that case? Are you able to talk about the case that you've been working on?
I've been working on 5 different cases.
Well,
But
the APD cop. The APD cop.
Yeah, it came back as a mistrial. That case is a mistrial. So,
okay.
That's kind of like the old the tie in a football game. It's like kissing your sister, right? So, you never heard that term?
No, don't talk. I'm from Kentucky. It's okay.
So anyway, that case is we still haven't heard anything back on whether that case will be retried or not. So that kind of like a limbo case. The case that went hand in hand with that and worked concurrently with that, it was a case from San Antonio involving the 3 San Antonio police officers. Sergeant Flores, Officer Villalobos, and Officer Alejandro. That case came back after a month of trial. That case came back not guilty on all charges. The jury returned their verdict. After a month of trial, the jury returned their verdict, or the jury came back with their verdict. They didn't actually return it for 45 minutes because they were eating lunch, but they came back in 15 minutes. Not guilty on all charges.
So was that one of those cases like in Austin where the district attorney runs on a platform that I'm going to put cops in prison?
Yes.
And they did the same thing in San Antonio with the DAs?
Same exact thing. And just to put this case, and I mean, I could literally talk about this case for hours on end, but just to put this case in perspective, these San Antonio police officers were fired and charged in 16 hours after the incident.
Wow.
16 hours after.
There's no due process there.
None.
And I could tell you about the investigation. I could talk for 8 hours straight on it. Just to show you. So the gist of the case is that officers respond to an apartment complex, and this lady cuts the fire control wires to the fire control panel which deals with detection, suppression, alert for a fire in an apartment complex.
Yeah, can't do that.
So, and it sets off the alarms. So when officers arrive, people are outside of their home. It's 11 o'clock at night. It's when people are otherwise in their home sleeping. Now they're outside their apartment complex. Everybody's, up in arms over this lady who has a history of mental illness. She's intoxicated, and people are none too happy about it. So when the officer arrives, he sees that she's burglarized the fire control area. So she broke into it, burglary of a non-residence. She cuts these panels, state jail felony, burglary of a non-residence. When the officers are trying to get down to the brass tacks of things, she takes off running. So that's evading on foot. That's a Class A misdemeanor. She runs into her apartment. So they're in hot pursuit. They try to force entry. Into this is a long story short. They try to force entry into a window that was open with a screen, and she comes at the officer swinging twice with a hammer. That's attempted capital murder 2 times. That's a first-degree felony. So I'm just stacking up these charges. So the officer calls out that he's been attacked. So that's kind of in San Antonio. That's as is anywhere. A host of officers show up. 3 sergeants, 16 total officers show up to the scene.
You said 16?
16 with 3 sergeants on the scene. So they formulate a plan. All her windows are open. It's a June night. They formulate a plan. They're going to go. It's a 1st-story apartment. Officers are going to kind of enter/hold area denial component on the back bedroom, where there is a bedridden old man, a man that's not ambulatory in a bedroom. So she, for over an hour, she's completely non-compliant. They're trying to talk her down. They're trying to get her to come out. Numerous different officers have tried these components of de-escalation to try to get her to come out. She's never been compliant, not one time. And the whole time, it's not like, hey, you're threatening me, I'm threatened by you. It's, I'm not going to jail. 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 It was all about her not going to jail because she knows she's going to jail. So she's erratic. She's manic. She's hypervigilant, throughout the entire time. And as I said, she's attacked a police officer twice. So another officer sees a window of opportunity, sees that she's laid the hammer down. He tries to enter. She attacks him with the hammer, barely missing him. He thinks he unlocks the door, but doesn't realize that there's 2 locks on that door because there's only one external plate that they can see. But he's sure he unlocked the door, so they think that there was only one lock, but there's actually 2. So they formulate this plan. They're going to go create a distraction/area denial in the back part of the bedroom where the non-ambulatory bedridden elderly gentleman is. And then they're going to come into the open door of the patio, and they're trying to cut her off because they see clearly as she's laid the hammer down. What they don't realize is that door is still locked. So when they come in, there's the delay. They hop this patio. 2 officers hop the patio, 1 officer holding cover through a window that they can see. Other officers are creating this diversion in the back bedroom. She grabs a hammer. She runs at the officers, and 3 officers fire at her, shoot and kill her. So this is the main crux of the investigation. But what their whole case hinged on the fact that there was a patio door, a French door, and the French doors, if you don't know, is a door with the small windows that are in individual frames, multiple windows in individual frames. So she could have cut through that door. It's a apartment complex. It's a San Antonio Housing Authority apartment complex. So things are not like the top quality type doors and windows and things along those, except for the front door. So she could have cut through that French door in a blink of an eye, actually, or thrown that hammer through the front door. So the officers reasonably believing that deadly force was immediately necessary to save their lives as well as the lives of the other officers that were in close proximity, used deadly force. So in this case, because she's a female, because there was this hint of mental illness and being in a mental health crisis, notwithstanding the fact that she's intoxicated, they charged these officers, and they fired them in 16 hours. 16 hours, not even 24 hours after
That's
this event.
incredible. That's incredible.
And like I said, I could talk about 8 hours straight about how inept and incompetent this investigation was by the San Antonio Police Department. But some of the highlights in this case there's when you go on to and all the chain of command, although not like the sheriff's office. And I will tell you, the sheriff's office, when I was there, I don't know what their procedures are now. The sheriff's office has the absolute best procedure when it comes down to review of a use of force case, because it goes, let's say, for instance, a deputy on the street is involved in a use of force case, and it's investigated by the chain of command. So the sergeant conducts the investigation, and the sergeant passes it to the lieutenant, who passes it to the captain, who passes it to the major, who passes it to the chief deputy. And everyone in that line is responsible to say in a memorandum. Now, you can say, I concur with, if you're a lieutenant, I concur with Sergeant so-and-so. If you're a captain, I concur with Lieutenant and Sergeant so-and-so. But you still have to put something in documentation that says you reviewed it and that you concur with their subsequent investigation that was subsequent to or following the initial investigation by the first line supervisor or IA, whoever conducted that investigation. Whereas these other agencies, and I mean the vast majority of other agencies around the state, around the country, all they do is they have a tracking form. They just go, Captain Jones checks or initials. Captain Jones looked at it, but gives no comment on it. There's nothing regarding it. So you can imagine officers fired in 16 hours, and policy demands that if a case comes to you, you have to review it, right? That's what you should do. And if a case hinges on body-worn camera, then you probably should look at body-worn camera, right? Well, guess what? Not one person in that chain of command through their audit trail looked at a body-worn camera. And a case where someone is using a weapon in the manner of its use or intended use. In the state of Texas, a deadly weapon is a firearm, number one, something manifestly designed to cause serious bodily injury or death, number two, and number three is something in the manner of its use or intended use is capable of causing serious bodily injury. So if you have a hammer and you say as a police officer, in the manner of its use or intended use, that hammer can cause serious bodily injury to me, you have to show why it can. Because unlike a gun, which can kill you at 5 feet or 50 feet, a hammer ain't going to kill you at 50 feet. So proximity is a major component to determine manner of its use or intended use. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely.
So consequently, if you were a detective and you had to investigate a case where a police officer said, hey, this person was charging me with a hammer, that they had to be in a certain proximity in order for that hammer in the manner of its use or intended use to be capable of causing serious bodily injury. You have to be in that proximity. You can't be across the apartment complex and someone raise a hammer and you shoot him. That's just not going to fly.
Right.
The most rudimentary function of this investigation, and not one measurement was taken, how far this woman had charged or where she was in concert with the officer when he fired that gun.
Incredible.
And I could literally tell you case. So, and then the French door, right? So this is the San Antonio Police Department. This is America's 8th largest city. Bexar County, this is America's 15th largest county. And so they're saying, hey, she couldn't have possibly come through that French door, or even the lock. It's not a single cylinder deadbolt or a double cylinder deadbolt. It's got a thumb throw. So all you have to do is come up and throw the thumb from right to left and you open up the throw bolt, right? That would take about what, 100th of a second?
Right.
And they said that door was such a barrier that she couldn't have breached that door either by throwing the thumb bolt and opening the door, or throwing that hammer, or actually her going right through that French door. Said he couldn't do it. And do you know they didn't seize that door? They didn't take that door along with them. It's
incredible.
You couldn't design a more inept and incompetent investigation by this police agency.
I'm assuming they don't have a shooting reconstruction team like the sheriff's office does in Travis County, because I know
they have a use of force team. They have a use of force, so it's kind of it goes all encompassing. But when it comes down to a reconstruction,
nothing.
Dude, they didn't even take a freaking measurement.
Incredible, man. You know, we when we first started, when I was a range master, and we were talking about that, we were like, we need a shooting reconstruction team, and we kind of had that, but it wasn't an official thing, you know.
You mean a shooting review team, right, Greg?
Right.
You mean review, not reconstruction.
Well, yeah, and they would come in and do all the measurements, and it was, you know, it's like an accident reconstruction team. Where was the officer? Where was the suspect? What was going on? What are the, you know, the angles and the whole bit? And you review that entire scene. So it's really surprising to me, as many shootings that San Antonio does get in. That they don't already have something like that. The one thing I want to recap on what you said is for people that are sitting there going, okay, a crazy woman who's drunk that's swinging a hammer around gets shot by cops. That doesn't sound reasonable. Here's what you have to look at is what you're explaining, but what a lot of people don't realize. It only takes her one time to strike me in the face to cause serious bodily injury to me. When that capability is there, I can use a higher level of force to stop her from doing that in Texas law. And bottom line, that's it. And when people look at cases like this, you know, they get indicted by the grand jury, they send it to a regular jury, a regular courtroom. They do that by design because the grand jury's like, you know, I think we need to throw this to the people and the people can decide on this. So let's go ahead and indict them, put them through. And of course, the DA is the only one that is presenting to the grand jury. So he can make the case look however he wants it to look to get that indictment. And then it goes over to a regular jury. And then you have to educate that regular jury, right, on if this individual can cause me serious bodily injury, which is something, protracted loss of a limb, something that's going to cause surgery to repair broken bone, laceration, that sort of stuff that's going to cause permanent injury, I can use deadly force to stop that from happening. And regardless of what your opinion is on whether a crazy woman who's drunk swinging a hammer is a deadly force threat to a cop that's standing there with a gun, it's that cop's view of what this situation is. Can she hit me and cause serious bodily injury? If she can, then I'm authorized to use deadly force, period. And that's the end of that discussion. Would you agree? Did I say that right?
You said it right, Greg, but you have to take in consideration too, and you know that we are in different times now, and depending on what county you're in is going to depend on whether you're going to get indicted or not. But it's not as simple as saying, well, we'll just let the jury decide. We're just going to indict them and let them do it. No, when you get indicted, it's the mark of Cain. You, as a police officer, you're done. You're not done, but you're screwed at that point, because now you're an indicted cop. Even though you're indicted, you're still, whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty. When in fact, if you had competent people And when I'm talking about competent people is have somebody competent at the DA's office that actually knows the use of force and doesn't have some political agenda. Unfortunately, our system is set up that you're going to elect somebody, and we know how that goes, that you can go and do pretty much whatever you want and put, an orangutan as your DA. And, they can do whatever they want at that point, and they can be politically motivated and use it as a weapon. We've seen that over and over and over again. I got a book that I've been reading about it. Forget it. All this other good stuff. But if you don't have a competent chief of police, if you don't have a competent system, like you said, the sheriff's office had a review team. We have Mark Sawa here that's an expert that is actually with no passion, because I've been around him when he's looked at cases, and he's done a really, really good job at it. They put the stuff out. So, you have to have somebody review it. So anyways, that's my 2 cents.
So going back to the officer believing that that threat is immediately necessary, there's a double component to that. Is there the officer's subjective analysis of it, and then the objective analysis of the officer's subjective analysis. So what people who are very critical of the police and want to show the police in the worst light possible will often bring that up. All it has to be is the officer's point of view. All the officer has to see it is through his eyes. And that is partially correct. But that analysis is done by what the reasonable officer, with essentially that officer's training and experience, would have done the same thing. And that's where, you can listen to newscast, read article after article, watch, YouTube video after YouTube video, and you'll see people say that and just stop at that. And then it brings people up in arms. Oh, Jesus Christ. All this cop has to do is say that he was threatened, and that's all there is to it. Well, that's certainly not all there is to it. That officer's decision is analyzed under the objective standard. And would a reasonable officer, what are the totality of circumstances confronting the officer, what the officer did, how they did it, and why they did it, to establish the proportionality of it. And then would a reasonably situated officer with essentially that officer's training and experience have made that same decision under those same circumstances? So that's the analysis. And when people oftentimes, like I said, that component of this society that will find fault in anything an officer does will always stop short of that and make sure that they just say it's all on the officer's opinion. It's all based upon the officer's opinion. Well, to a certain degree, that's true, because it's the officer making that decision. But his decision or her decision is analyzed under the objective standard. And that's the most important part of it.
So the good thing about this particular case is it went to trial, and the news media covered it.
Well, not only did they cover it, it was live streamed on 2 news networks each and every day, live streamed every moment of that trial. So, the judge periodically shut down the audio because they had to discuss things that the judge wouldn't allow or didn't allow to be released into the public. But that was few and far between. That judge overwhelmingly opened up the doors on that trial and showed it for everything that it was.
Because this is a fascinating case. I mean, we can sit here and Mark can talk for hours, but the bottom line is, as I've learned from Mark, is that these cameras that we carry, and remember, I carry the camera now. I've got an Axon camera. Not only do I have an Axon camera, I have an Axon camera now on the video in my patrol car that actually can go ahead and pick up all kinds of crazy stuff. But the bottom line is that you're just getting one view. And Mark always brings that point home, especially in this case. You have to break everything down, literally frame by frame, and time, distance, opportunity, everything else. And you have to analyze everything. This is what makes this case, when when we started talking about this case, after it was said and done, he was able to tell me the details. I went like, there's no way that could happen. That you could actually have nobody in the chain of command look at something. Remember, this is somebody that an officer shot and killed. And you're going to go ahead and take the degree to look at everything in this case. Everything. To be fair, you have to look at everything. The level of negligence that I saw here, and this is my opinion only, the negligence is unthinkable that you could walk into a courtroom and they ask you a question. Well, officer, how far was he from it? And you didn't do the basic police 101. Greg, when we were in basic academy, what did we do? We had to have tape measures. We had to go ahead and crime scene. And this is basic crime scene when remember back in the day that you had to throw fingerprint powder, all this other crap. And you're looking at the basics.
They still do that, right? They still throw fingerprint powder, don't they?
Well, but still, you still have to go ahead and go through the basics and collect. That's what we do. And you bring back then, remember, if you worked homicide, man, when I first came in as a cop, the homicide guys, man, those guys walked on water as the chiefs of police. Little did I know, right? The incompetence. And we can have a whole program on talking about chiefs of police alone on how competent and incompetent those people are. But, again, it's the basic stuff that you have to do at a scene, and it just wasn't done here. And for you to say as a supervisor, and I've seen many a video, I can give you a really good case that I was going to give you in this other one, where this guy just went ahead and trashed one of my officers to the sheriff. And I pulled the video. I went through the sound. I looked at everything. That guy just, lied through his teeth, of course, because I had the video. But you had to examine everything. And I've had sergeants bring me stuff. Oh, yeah, this. And I said, not so fast, Hoss. And then I turn around, look at the evidence, look at everything that you've got, ask the questions, and, you get another perspective. This is the part that I don't understand, that the chief of police, an assistant chief, and everybody else in your case, Mark, that didn't do anything. That's incredible.
Were there recommendations through the chain of command to the chief to fire these guys immediately?
They locked step with the chief of police. It was the Abilene paradox. They just locked step. It was shoulder to shoulder with the chief of police. They wanted it was hey, you're getting fired. That's all there is to it.
So, but did that come from the their immediate supervisor up? Like, these guys need to be fired. Then the lieutenant said these guys need to be fired.
There was no immediate supervisor. Number one of the officers that's involved is a supervisor. He's a sergeant. Okay. So, as I said, 3 sergeants were on that scene.
Right.
And so it starts off with an assistant chief, a deputy chief. So the whole chain of command starts off with a deputy chief. The captain did a summation for the chain of command. And then it went from there. So, the lead investigator, it was his first homicide case. So imagine this: 3 officers, San Antonio officers.
First homicide case, and he was doing.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah. His first homicide case.
He was,
and he was investigating people in his own, agency.
Yeah.
Right there. Complete incompetence.
And never in the history of the San Antonio Police Department, the storied history of the San Antonio Police Department, had an officer ever been charged with murder. And here's a cop here's a detective in his first murder case charging 2 of them with murder.
Incredible.
It's unreal, man. It's
but what really jacks me up is not so much that. But think about it. You're a police officer. You get indicted, okay? And you did everything right. You used your proper use of force. If anybody would have had any semblance of, let's go in there and analyze this right quick, which you should do, you shouldn't have any stone turned. And I know, because I've done cases before where I've sat there and there's no stone unturned, because that's what we do. We're supposed to be fact finders and not sitting there, be a mouthpiece for some political agenda. It's just not happening. And for them not to do their job, basically take measurements. Oh, by the way, just so you'll know, that security system that Mark was talking about, that's probably about $200,000-$300,000 security system that they have in there for fire control. Fire department's telling you, hey, they just shut this whole thing down. So there's a lot more components that you would need to go ahead and look at everything. There has to be eyewitnesses, a history of this person, so forth and so on. So many moving parts and so many things that we're missing here. That's just unbelievable.
And one of the things, again, when it comes down to the totality of circumstances of this particular case, the one thing that one of the many things that I had to bring forward in this case, and this is why it's of the utmost importance to bring the perspective of an experienced police officer into the case, so this fire control panel was in a room that was attached to the apartment building, but it had a lock. It had a door with a lock, and this gal pried open the lock with the hammer that she used to attack the officers. And so there was no tool impression done. There was no understanding of that she broke into there. There was nothing in regards to someone that took the wires that she cut to try to discern the tool that she used to cut those wires that can be discerned positively. It's all forensics, the tool marks of the door that could have been matched up and all those things. But one of the big things for me was, and it came from a conversation that I had with Joe at the onset of this case, because one of the things that I brought, in my presentation, in my hours-long presentation to the attorneys, is that one of the things that I brought up was I've never, except for one person, never known a police officer, and I've supervised tens of dozens in a patrol scenario and reviewed countless reports, written countless reports, investigated countless types of field investigations, but I've never investigated a case where someone cut a fire control panel to an apartment complex. And if I ever did and was able to identify someone, I would hold them as the highest threat because they're a threat to an entire apartment complex. Why else would someone cut a fire control panel to an apartment complex? And Joe was the only person that ever, out of all the cops that I talked to, said, hey, have you ever handled a case where someone cut a fire control panel apartment? No, of course not. But Joe has. And guess what the outcome was? The dude set his apartment on fire, hung himself, and did so solely to kill his neighbor in the fire that he set.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the threat that something brings in the totality of circumstances, there is no way, because one of the things is that the San Antonio, the upper echelon, as they tried to justify their actions, was, the officers had no business doing a forced entry into that apartment. They should have just left. They should have just left her.
It was a dynamic scene. There's extingent circumstances.
Yeah.
This individual is in the middle of a criminal episode. What are they talking about?
Right. With people that live in this apartment complex.
No, and they had a guy that was Mark. She had a person in there that was an invalid, had no way of getting up. If that thing would have gone in flame, he would have died.
Yeah, who died 2 or 3 months later, actually, because he was so infirmed.
Wow.
Man,
Incredible.
it's unreal.
And you know that the whole second guessing, right? So and I played the potato chip couch advocate here. It's like, it's just a woman with a hammer and you're going to kill her. Why didn't you it's a French door. You should have been able to just kick that in. Being a grown human being, you should be able to just kick that in, go in there and grab her. So she hits you with a hammer once, grab a hold of her and subdue her. I'm sure there's plenty of advocates like that.
There was, and they're for the state. The government's advocates were exactly that.
Wow. The states Oh wow.
But
Okay.
hold on a
The
second.
state
So,
themselves.
but they
Yeah.
were charging those officers, Mark, as I understand. You told me. Make sure I'm correct on this. They were charging them with harming a mental health.
No, that was
Not
another
nec-
case. That
Oh,
was
that was
another.
not okay. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay. I stand
Mm.
corrected.
Yeah,
that was-
well, anybody that would actually bring that up has never dealt with a person if she's truly manic. They've never been on a call with a manic person before, because I can tell you, typically they don't have the follow through. As far as if a person is, let's say, schizoaffective disorder, which is kind of manic slash schizophrenia. Oftentimes they won't have the follow through to accomplish a big plan. However, if they're angry and they're manic, they can be extremely violent and extremely effective with what they want to do right this moment.
Yeah,
and
and
that's
it's not in this sense, through this over 1 hour negotiation process that involved numerous officers at different times as they try to switch paths, they try to see if somebody else could do better, to see if she could develop some rapport with somebody. They did everything perfectly when it came down to trying to use active listening skills and principles of persuasion to get her to come out peacefully. There was not one moment, and I mean this. This isn't like in some exaggeration where overwhelmingly she did something, but there was these fleeting moments. There was no fleeting moment. There was not one moment where she gave any indication that she was going to come into compliance. There was none. She at not one point ever in their speaking with her would have given any reasonable officer, any experienced officer, that she was going to come into compliance. So to ultimately utilize these principles of tactical de-escalation, call it the 5 C's, the 4 A's, the patrol acronym, the 12 components of tactical planning and sound decision making, whatever you wanted to call it, as they put that plan together, it was the right time, because a period of time had gone by. They were at a complete and total stalemate. There was no way that this woman would fall into compliance. So they had to do what they had to do at that point in time, because any experienced police officer knows that there's a careful balance in time and circumstances when you're dealing with a person who is non-compliant, because as you try to bring them into compliance and you use your active listening skills and you use your diffusing techniques and you use your principles of persuasion to try to bring them into compliance, and they're not, that extra time affords them the opportunity to plan out whatever countermeasures that they're going to use when you ultimately have to use that level of force to bring them into custody. So, you have to balance that, because the longer you take, the more planned, the better off they are to use their countermeasures against you. So in my opinion, they balance this appropriately, because, there was always from the always, why then? Why couldn't you waited longer? Why couldn't you waited longer? But I assure you, had they waited longer and she ultimately set forth this plan to burn down the apartment complex where she had fuels set around, which she didn't. Well, they don't know for a fact she didn't, because another thing, they did a search warrant on her apartment and never looked for anything flammable in her apartment.
Oh boy.
So had they waited and continued to try to talk to her, when any reasonable officer would see they're in a stalemate, they're going nowhere with her. It doesn't matter how long they're there. And then she set the apartment on fire, killed her, killed the old man, killed other residents of this apartment complex. Every finger would have been pointed back at them and said, anybody could see you were getting nowhere with her. Why didn't you try to use your tactics and your planning and your strategies and your methods that you learned through the San Antonio Police Department to take her into custody? You had 16 officers on the store, 15 at that time. One officer returned to duty. 15 officers at that time.
Incredible. So the administration's argument was, or their solution was, she's drunk, she's inside of her house, she's not a threat to anybody else. Why didn't y'all just leave?
Yeah, that was one of them. And then it was, well, if you didn't think she was, why did you get a search warrant? So then it was if when you tried to force entry, you didn't have exigent circumstances at that time. All they did was just jump. And then ultimately, here's the ultimate one. You haven't even heard the whole story yet. Here's the ultimate one. When they realized, as they started going through the state, the state started realizing that as they started going through the San Antonio Police Department and they're interviewing different people, they started realizing, wow, every San Antonio police officer would have done the same thing these officers did. So when you talk about the reasonable officer with essentially the same training and experience, when you say every officer would have done the same thing, you pretty much check that box, right?
Wow.
So then the DA's office said, you know what? Because they didn't have exigent circumstances, that a citizen in the state of Texas, fully knowing now 16 officers for over an hour trying to talk to you, uniformed police officers, in the distinctive uniform of the San Antonio Police Department, and you saw the patrol cars in the distinctive patrol car of the San Antonio Police Department, you know you're speaking to police officers because for 1 hour you're saying, you're not taking me to jail, you're not taking me to jail. When they ultimately tried to force entry to that apartment and she used deadly force, that she was justified in using deadly force.
Wow.
And
really?
And then any citizen in San Antonio or the state of Texas has the right to make up their own mind whether or not a police officer has exigent circumstances in entering their home, and they can justifiably use deadly force.
Oh, no, they can't. Federal law. So, no, case
of course
law.
they can't.
Oh, my God.
Are you kidding?
But hold on, there was one more component, Mark, that we really didn't cover. You covered that it took 16 hours, and we talked about that. And you talked about, the examination of the evidence and the video and everything else. But the other thing that they did not read the reports. To me, that was the crux.
They didn't look over it. They didn't look over it. Other than the captain put together this 4-page.
Right. But I'm talking about if it comes to me, I want to read the reports. I want to see, and they pulled that evidence out because your attorneys knew that, and they went in there into the system. You know how ours, if you go into our system, it's going to show, if I open a report, it's going to show, hey, Joe Escribano opened a report at this time, this day, and he looked at it for how much time he had it open and whatever. And now you know that everybody examined this. But the travesty here is that they didn't. They just went on, the chief said it's good, let's just roll with this, or this captain wrote this debauchery, and let's just go ahead and roll with that without even looking at anything. Crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, when you talk about reports, what report could possibly be written in 16 hours from an investigative standpoint?
There you go. That too.
So this is, and it's literally, it's. I'm telling you, I could talk for 9 hours. The one officer, remember I said one officer initially tried to force entry, and she swung at him twice. She also threw a candle at him, one of the big religious candles, and hit him in the arm and injured his arm. So, which would also tell a reasonable officer, not only will she attack you with the hammer in her hand, but she'll also throw something at you too if you're out of her range. So they invited this officer and said, or they subpoenaed this officer to the grand jury and said, hey, we need you to speak to the grand jury, because you're involved in this case. And after he gave testimony to the grand jury, they said, hey, by the way, do you know what you just did? You just admitted to a burglary of a residence. You just admitted to a burglary of a residence.
Wow.
Because you didn't have exigent circumstances. You just burglarized her residence. So in the meantime, basically the underlying thing was that through this process, you better be on our side because you admitted to a burglary of a residence. They fully knowing what he was going to say, they lure an officer into a grand jury.
That's coercion. That's official misconduct,
It's an
official
official
oppression.
oppression is really what it
Official
is.
oppression.
Sure.
It's and you know what? They need to go back to whatever law school they got, crackerjack box they got their stuff from. They need to go back because this is just basic 101 stuff. In a
Well, no,
million years, you wouldn't indict anything like this. This is nuts.
so they're intentionally trying to litigate case law is what they're trying to do. They're trying to do this a crazy, a cop is going to burglarize this, and so we need case law so cops can't get in your house. Now, let me change a perspective here just for a minute, Mark. You haven't really shared much about this suspect, this woman that got shot. Now, I know her to be 95 years old. She's on a cane. She's on medication, and she could barely be able to walk out to get her mail in a mailbox. Is that correct?
No, she's 46 years old, 46 or 47. She's a roofer. She's only 5'1", but she's about 145 to 155 pounds. And she's built really, really good. She's a roofer.
So she knows how to swing a hammer well?
Oh, she knows how to swing a hammer. And not only that, she has her claw hammer. So how large do you think the claw hammer was?
Well, now I know it's a roofing claw hammer, so it's pretty big.
Well, how much do you think it weighed?
I don't know.
No, nor does the San Antonio Police Department. They don't know how much it weighs either.
Did they?
Or how big? Did they even collect it?
Yeah, they collected it.
Oh,
okay,
thank goodness.
right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Somebody
did that.
collected it. Okay, but nobody looked at it.
So isn't it interesting on how
Wait.
it'll change perspective on a little bit as far as, okay, you got a 95-year-old woman with her invalid husband in the back room, and she can walk on a cane and she barely makes it to the mailbox, to a 40 or so year old woman who is
46,
a
47.
roofer.
Yeah.
Does that change the perspective a little
Yeah.
bit? How well does she actually swing a hammer?
You saw how fast she was. She's lightning fast.
And not only that, but she can go ahead and launch that thing at you too. Don't
Yeah.
remember that
Yeah.
thing. That is a projectal that's coming your way.
Yeah. And not to say how many hammers she had in her house or how many other improvised type weapons that she had as well.
And that's the thing, right? Because people will get this perspective. Oh, they shot this woman who was swinging a hammer. I'm imagining this woman in a nightgown because it's late at night, and there was a hammer in a drawer, that she used for hanging pictures on the wall, twice a year. And she pulls out this little hammer and she's swinging it at the officers. That's not what was happening here.
So she was back behind this big old television. So she used this television as a block, as to hide what she was doing back behind the television. So the officers never could determine what she was doing behind, because she never came out from the television except to attack them and except to check the door. She would go back to look in the bedrooms. So she was kind of creating this little area of security around her, and she would check it to make sure that no one had breached it.
Or a defensive position, building her defensive position.
Yeah, she was very, very sound as far as doing what she could to prevent those officers from coming in that apartment to get her.
Yeah, it's interesting on how because like I said, you'll listen to the Monday morning quarterbacks on stuff like this, and it'll create a picture in your mind of what you think this situation is, when it was very much different, very dynamic, and these officers were in danger. There's a big difference between just somebody who owns a hammer and uses it twice a year, as opposed to somebody who owns multiple hammers.
Greg, you make a good point.
Uses it professionally.
You make a very good point, because a lot of people think that this is like in the movies, that you get a second, hey, take 2, take 3, take 4.
Right.
And that's not the case. You have something happening in front of you real time. You have to take care of business in real time, which you have no way of having, hey, let's go and take a quick time out for me to do X, Y, and Z. It doesn't work that way.
And in this situation, knowing that there's an invalid in the house, and I know that I have an intoxicated, mentally ill person who has been violent with a hammer, I have a a duty of service at this point. I have a duty of protection. I have to make sure this scene is okay before I leave, because I am not going to leave that scene with that invalid in the back.
You can't. You can't.
And how about all the people in the complex? I
Yep.
mean, if she sets that thing on fire, how about everybody else that was in the complex that needed to be, you have to help? Were her intentions telegraphed? They were completely telegraphed when she destroyed all that stuff for the fire safety. The minute she did crazy, crazy like a fox. When she destroyed that, that was the beginning of one of the dominoes. And you can go all the way back into the time that she gets in there. You have all these people, you have, opportunity, time, motive. You've got to do something. You do.
Mark, in a situation like this, you're a cop, you're trying to do the right thing. You roll up on a scene where somebody has cut this alarm. You find out the person that cut the alarm, you realize that they're intoxicated. You run background on this individual. They have a mental health history. Through your training and experience as a cop, you recognize that this person is manic, she's hypervigilant, and she's violent. And you're there and you're trying your best to solve this problem. And then you realize, oh, she's inside of a house with a person that can't defend themselves. And we don't know what her intentions are for sure. And you're trying, like I said, you're trying to do the best you can. And this happens. This scenario plays itself out. And then within 16 hours, your chief of police, your deputy chief, your assistant chief, whatever, all recommends your termination. You turn in you turn in your badge, you're gone. You're fired. You're not put on suspension in lieu of an investigation. You're fired right there. How does that affect the rest of the entire agency of these cops that are trying to do the right thing?
I mean, it would destroy them, and I can only think, I can only put things in terms of where I came from. And the sheriff's office was small enough, but yet large enough. The Travis County Sheriff's Office was a perfect blend, as far as I'm concerned, of the amount of officers to provide perspective of an overall situation where where you could kind of garner everyone's opinion of a situation that was happening, but it was small enough that you could get a really good sampling of everybody's opinion, and or everyone you could motivate and lead a group of people, a group of officers to a command element and say, y'all messed this up. And this is why you messed it up. This is how you messed it up. And you need to correct it, or we're going to correct it. One way or another, this is going to get corrected. And that is not everywhere else. And what's so amazing to me is it, as a sheriff's deputy, you work for a politician. But in virtually every sheriff I ever worked for, they were the most unpolitical people in the whole sphere of law enforcement that was any part of Travis County. That they acted outside of politics, or you acted, I should say they, because, you really didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, but the officers were empowered enough through virtually all of my career. Now, there's a portion of my career where there wasn't, but officers were empowered enough to gain their momentum and bring it to the agency and say, hey, this needs to get corrected. And even if it didn't get corrected, even if the agency said, no, it doesn't, you weren't retaliated on. There was no retaliation based upon your opinion or what you did, and that you could go against that administration all through the process. So in civil service, you could amass your group and say, we're against the administration on this because the administration did this, and this thing wrong. And the administration can say, no, we didn't. But hey, in essence, because there was no retaliation and there was no outward animus or adversarial relationship with those officers, that they allowed the officers that ability to voice their opinion and show why they were against whatever the actions the agency was taking. That is not the same everywhere else. And what I saw, and even though there's an officers association, there's arbitration, there's all kinds of different means for an officer in San Antonio to seek redress regarding any type of adversarial employee action that would be enacted upon them. They don't, man. There wasn't a word that I saw through the rank and file during the course of this. Now, after they came back with the not guilty verdict, but not only the not guilty verdict in 15 minutes after a month-long trial, and talk about sending a statement. Then there was everybody kind of jump on the bandwagon and go, yeah, man, you guys, you did all this bad thing. That should have been from hour 17 when those officers were fired and charged with murder and aggravated assault. That should have happened right then and there, and it should have been through the entire process, but it wasn't the case.
Well, it's probably because they're terrified of the retaliation that will happen if every once in a while. I was in I worked for the sheriff's office long enough to where I 100% agree with you. During 97% of everything that happened at the sheriff's office, you could share that. There was a couple of times that people were in certain situations where you were scared of that person. That person would come after you. They're going to get you sooner or later. And you had to deal with that. But every time I ever went to IA, anytime I was ever involved in any IA cases or anything, across the board, I think our chain of command and everybody treated people fairly.
I could not agree more.
And
wait, let's hear it, Joe.
No, there was a situation. Well, in my case, where I went ahead and brought the lawsuit for the pay for the lieutenants, what you don't know, or you may know, is that all my emails, all of them, were intercepted. Anytime I did any kind of emailing, because my attorneys found out, he brought me into the office to say, I know you're going to go and lose your, you know what? When I tell you this, I say, go ahead. I'm not going to lose my stuff. Go ahead, tell me. And then he told me that, and I lost my stuff.
How long did you work?
Or open records request to your
I'm sorry?
email?
The what?
Intercepted or open records request?
Anytime I would send an email, it would go to them.
To who? To your lawyer?
No, the.
I know who you're talking about.
Whoever. My emails, my emails, and I've got this. This is the part of the record, by the way. My emails, when I started this lawsuit, anytime I would send an email, because they were trying to get me in my email system to say something so they could burn me on it. Why would you intercept my email?
Who's they?
Well, I know who he's talking about, but
okay.
let's don't say it here. I'll tell you, or we can talk about
camera.
it. But what I'm gonna ask, how many years did you work for the Travis County Sheriff's Office, Joe?
34 years.
Out of 34 years, you're bringing up one example. So that's where I come up with 98%.
No, you're right.
The time,
you're right.
It was solid. I can give you like 2% of the time that I worked at the sheriff's office that somebody came after me, and it wasn't a person that I thought would ever do that, and I was completely surprised. It was amazing, but that's one person. That's not the agency.
You're right.
It wasn't a culture of the agency. It sounds like to me that the San Antonio situation, there is a culture in that agency to where you don't say anything, otherwise they're going to come after you.
Oh, it's not just them. It's many agencies. But one agency that's not is the Houston Police Department. In the Houston Police Department, if you have an opinion, you voice that opinion. And that officers association stands shoulder to shoulder with you and will never allow. And I mean, you talk about a force to be reckoned with. That if somebody dare go after an officer, if given my opinion, my experience with them, they are exactly like our agency. It is where like I said, there were many times that I pissed off the chief deputy, that I pissed off the sheriff, and never once ever feared retaliation as a result of it. Now, I knew I pissed them off, and I knew I was going to piss them off by what I brought forward, but I never feared retaliation as a result of it. Never.
You know, something that kind of is a parallel to that. You know, there will be people that could listen to our conversation we're having right now and say, yeah, that's typical. That's thin blue line stuff. And they're hiding behind that. And the cops can do whatever they want to and kill innocent women coming at you with a hammer and get away with it. And then the association will 100% back these criminals from killing people and that sort of thing. What I don't think that a lot of people understand is that law is a liberal art, which means it's argumentative, right? It's constantly argumentative based on people's training experience and their perception and subjective and objective reviews of these sorts of things. And that's something that we don't have, I believe we don't have enough of, is individuals that are strong and will stand up and argue when those politicians say the ridiculous things that they say, when the media says the ridiculous things that they say. My example is, this isn't a great example, but I know where I'm going here. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to go to a Catholic priest and ask for marital advice. This individual doesn't have a clue of what it's like to be in a relationship with someone of the opposite sex and having an argument. I know that they can read books and they can go through training and then they can give good advice, but I don't know whether you take a lily white person and say, I need you to go be the wall against crime, against criminals. Here's the lily white person, the good guy. It's always nice, always very calm, always this, always that. And we're going to send you to the crime-ridden area of a community and expect you to be effective. No, you need to have people that will stand up and stand against the people that are yelling at you in your face and accusing you of all this horrendous stuff. We have to be able to stand up and hold that wall, hold that line. Am I making any sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, your Catholic priest example is a great example, because if a Catholic priest tries to tell you about the dynamics of a woman and man relationship in a marriage, and the day in and day out aspects, no, you're right. That's the worst person in the world to give you an example. But he can tell you what God says, what religion says about the marriage and about how you should deal with that marriage. And then you put it in perspective in your day in, day out operation. And using that as an example, in the same way where you have the lily white person, say, for instance, somebody in a command element that says, hey, guys, this is what we expect from you. But in the same way that the person being counseled by the Catholic priest says to the Catholic priest, Father, you don't understand. This is part of what I deal with day in and day out. You don't understand that pressure. You don't understand that adversity that I deal with. In the same way, that officer has to tell that captain, hey, you, this is what you have to appreciate regarding our world. And then that person, whatever advice they give, whatever direction they give, has to take that into consideration when it comes down to providing direction or providing mandates to the way those officers conduct their business. And certainly in regards, and that's why experts are of the utmost importance when it comes down to understanding the complexity and dynamic of what an officer deals with. And, you know, that San Antonio case is just fraught with it, you know, because you can say, hey, you could have been there longer and had that discussion with her longer. But I can say, hey, you know what? I know what it's like to beat a dead horse while I'm talking to somebody. And then when I finally go to put hands on them, they know exactly what they're going to do when I don't, rather than me coming up on the scene and going, already knowing officers have been dealing with this person for a period of time. They're banging their heads against the wall. They're getting nowhere with them. When I come onto that scene, the very first thing I do is go, turn around, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest, and snatch them up before they have time to think. Now, you might say, well, hey, why did you give them the same time these other officers did? Because they gave him that time. My training and experience says that if I do the same thing, all I'm doing is just delaying the inevitable, because I know it's going to be inevitable. But now I can use this opportunity, this tactical advantage, that I can cross up their mind before they can enact whatever countermeasures that they're going to use against me. Because in the ultimate end, which is what those people don't realize, is that when I use these tactics, and it might seem gruff and it might seem abrupt to you outside of the realm of your level of experience, that these tactics actually save this person from doing what they may have done, and then forced me to use a higher level of force, thus increasing the opportunity, if not the probability, of them being injured in the process. And you could go freaking YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video and watch these officers struggling to get that guy's hand behind their back. Get your hand behind your back. Get your hand behind, rather than delivering an elbow to the side of their face, rather than driving their knee into their common perineal, rather than driving all their weight, or a walk down or a leg sweep, where they're playing with them, and then all of a sudden, because they played with them for 25 seconds, they're now gassed, and now the guy actually can reach into his waist, and then they end up shooting him. Well, had they done what we were trained to do, they'd have never had to shoot him. They'd have never been in that position. And you could go time and time again. And that's where the individual officer's training and experience comes in, but somebody has to listen to that. Somebody has to understand that dynamic. So
and be open to that, and not just protecting their appointed position.
Exactly.
You know, thinking that I have to be hard on this person because the sheriff or the chief put me in this position, and they expect me to pass down harsh judgment. And that's because that's the other thing. I remember when we got cameras on our cars, and we used to do DWI stops. Person would be all over the road, and we would stop them, get them out, do a modified field sobriety kind of thing. We'd figure out, oh, they're on something or they're drunk, and we would hook them up and put them in the car, impound their car, take them to jail, get their breathalyzer, and we're back on the street. Well, they put cameras in our cars, and it changed that dynamic completely, because now you're on camera. Now you're having to show perfect tactics, show perfect, officer presence. And you're having to do this film production of, let's get the person positioned in front of the car so we can capture them on camera, which is a horribly dangerous place to be on the side of the road, is walking in between the suspect vehicle where you stop them and your car, because where's the other DWI going to hit? They're going to run into your patrol car, push that patrol car into you and everybody else. So anyway, it changes dynamic. And it is my belief that this is a thing. This is a psychological thing. You can do it with children, see how kids behave with a hidden camera. But as soon as you bring a camera into the room that they can see and they know they're on film, they immediately start acting differently. They start performing for the camera. And I believe that officers do that today with body-worn cameras, which could be good or could be bad, right? I like the body-worn camera because it does make it takes away the dishonesty that the cop may end up showing at one point or another through his perspective. It keeps everybody honest on that. However, the cop is also very reluctant on applying good, effective techniques that will, modify this person's behavior or incapacitate them for a shorter period of time, so you could get those handcuffs on. And I say incapacitated, I'm not talking about knockout, talking about make them more compliant by using a good technique, but that technique looks very violent. Us on this show right now knows that a strike to the common perineal is not violent, but if you film it and you get a good motor disruption of that knee, that person falls to the ground and it looks like you just really nailed them. So instead of hitting them one time effectively, they'll hit them 30 times really ineffectively, slapping them around and wrestling around. And like you said, all of a sudden now 20 seconds, 30 seconds into putting a lot of effort in, and you're getting that, vagal stimulation as far as holding your breath and concentrating and trying to get this thing done. All of a sudden your O2 drops way down and you're really ineffectual. And it makes the fight longer and it makes it look more violent instead of just taking care of it. Like you said, 1 or 2 strikes, get them on the ground, get a good, some sort of good technique on them and get them handcuffed. So
Well,
I
yeah.
think that's a dynamic that we also have to deal with.
Right, because you've had the the input of electronic devices, you've had the input of all kinds of other stuff that we've used, and now everybody depend on those, and they're quick to, oh well, I can probably use this or use that, when knowing that if you try to go and hit somebody like at this time of the year, you try to hit them with a taser, you're going to find out very quickly that it's going to be very ineffective because they have coats on. And you're going to have to always be able to do what you have to do. And that's going to be able to go hands-on with somebody. And I see that all the time. And you're absolutely right. You can go on YouTube right now and see case after case, like you just said. They're sitting there dancing with this person when they should have, like Mark said, immediately. If I'm going to take you, I've been to scenes and you have too. If I'm going to arrest you, when I get there and I know I'm going to arrest you, I'm not going to give you I'm not going to dance with you. I am going to go hands-on very quickly to take you into custody. And if I get any resistance whatsoever, I'm going to use the force that I have to use to take you into custody. And it's not going to look pretty, but I'm going to save myself the aggravation. Of course, it's not going to look good, but I'm going to save the aggravation of, oh, well, you went ahead and used excessive force, this, that, the other. No, it's not at all. And you're right. We were taught to hit the different areas. They don't look good, but we were taught to do that to be able to take somebody into custody.
But they minimize injury, and again, it's based on the circumstances of that case. Because when time and circumstances exist, and through your training and experience, you know that you can talk this guy into those cuffs. You should absolutely talk that guy into the cuffs. That is the best tactic that you could possibly employ or deploy when it comes down to an arrest situation. I remember back in the 90s when everybody was going to these high-speed tactical courses. When I was a sergeant, I was sending people to these courses and attending courses myself. And all these tactical training groups were using quotes from Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Sun Tzu says the ultimate art of war is to beat your opponent without ever entering onto the field of battle. That is the ultimate art of war. That is the ultimate component of war, is to never enter onto the field of battle, but still beat or overcome your opponent based upon that. So again, it's that balance, but that's where your training and experience comes into play.
But the other thing too, Mark, is that a class, which we could talk about too, was the pre-indicators of somebody that's going to assault you, which I learned. I mean, that class that you put on is fantastic. The targeting. When I talk about targeting, a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about. But you're approaching a car, okay? And the person already saw you in that side view mirror, because when you're lighting somebody up and they're pulling them over, they already saw you in the side view mirror and they saw you in the rear view mirror. But when that person not only sees you in the side view mirror, sees you in the rear view mirror, but turns their head, I learned that's one of the it's not the do all, but it's
none are the do all. None of them are.
But in combination for everything else, when you're talking to somebody, in my experience, I can, and I'll have to, of course, articulate that. And this is why I took that action. There it is. It's a fine line. It's almost art form. And people just don't realize that you have to balance all of this in a split second. You don't have a retake like they do in Hollywood. You have to do all of this in a split second. I'm going to arrest you. I'm not going to arrest you. Where is it going to end?
But those pre-assault indicators, those are training and experience, man. That's where it all
Yep.
falls back on that officer's training and experience.
Well, we're at an hour and about 20 right now, and I think we could probably go for another 3 hours or so.
No
But I
doubt.
want to say, Mark, thanks for breaking this down for us, and
Sure.
I would love to actually look at this and look at specific parts of that case. But that's one of those things. It's like you're looking at this case, and some people will look at an event. And they will say that's excessive force. The other person will look at the same event and say that was effective force. And that's the thing that we have to define and also defend every time. And God bless, the Travis County Sheriff's Office, Law Enforcement Officers Association, and the Houston Police Department Association, Austin Police Department Association, that will stand up and go, no, this silliness has to stop. This is how this works. I don't get paid to get shot, stabbed, beat up, or anything else. This is how I handled it. Was it reasonable based on my training experience and another officer's objective view of it, or not? And so,
we're the only profession that has a camera stuck to us. Why don't you put one on the DA?
yeah. So I want to say on behalf of everybody that's listening as well, Mark, thank you for your work in this and getting decent cops put back, hopefully on duty. I don't know whether they'll stay there, whether those guys will retire, or what will happen with them. And God bless the rest of the San Antonio Police Department for standing fast and putting up with the silliness of a chain of command that will fire you within 16 hours.
Yep.
All right. Thanks,
All
guys.
right, brothers.